The single thing that I created that was the most successful for me during several of the recessions was this smart work and referral marketing network, nicknamed Swarm. Now it's based on recruiting multiple people in the food chain. Everything from the broker down to the soda vendor at each significant stage in the supply chain. And it was a monogamous network. In other words, if you were part of it, you couldn't be part of another network. And part of what we did, think of it as barn raising. One of the things we did is everybody would bring in their most current qualified opportunities, share those. We'd consolidate it into a spreadsheet. We would put who brought it in terms of where they fit in the food chain. We put what stage of a project it was in. If it's in early stage with the broker versus they've moved in and now they're looking at vendors and suppliers. And we'd have it mapped there so that if I went into it looking for an opportunity, if I'm in the furniture business, I'd look at who's in the real estate broker stage or who's in the architectural stage because I'm looking upstream. And then the way it worked is that you would contact the person upstream and ask for a warm introduction. So it takes lots of trust. It takes some discipline. There's a format to the process. And what this helped us do is avoid this problem here. When we did research and we used Texas A&M School of Business to look at how clients make decision versus how most salespeople spend their time, or sales organizations, we found that most of the decision making, 65%, was based on your chemistry, how reliable, frequent, your competency, your responsiveness, your chemistry. And what we found is that if you had strong credibility, you got room, you were given the benefit of the doubt on the other stages. But if you didn't have the credibility, then those other stages were used to weed you out. So it flipped the point. Trying to convince people that you've got the best chair with the best ergonomics, we spend a lot of time on that, but that's a low criteria for most companies. Most companies only see superficial differences. I was working on a large headquarters project for an auto manufacturer, and they had 4 mock-ups from 4 major manufacturers. These were huge mock-ups. I mean, these were like 20 stations in different configurations. They were all essentially the same. However, the preference from the people using it was one particular manufacturer because they liked the color better. So you couldn't convince them that they're basically the same. Those chairs function the same. It's the same dimensions. So that's why trying to focus so much time on fit and differentiation without the credibility is a little bit of a waste of time. Now, performance means performance through the evaluation process. Professional looking proposal, how well choreographed you were, attention on the details, all of that. And again, that's not a major part of their decision, but we spend a lot of time. And then if we don't have those things in place, and we've all been through it, right? We try to guess how low can we get and still keep our dealers in business. And that, when we get into that mode, that's simply a reflection that we didn't build the foundation when we're trying to really focus on low price. So the Swarm network, what it does is it gets us in earlier, gets us in higher so we can build those relationships. So for example, if Pam brings me into an account, then she's already got a good relationship with that account. So I get part of that halo effect. It's called third person credibility. So it's a really elegant system of building credibility more rapidly without having to go to all the lunches and dinners and things like that, because we're working off the relationships we already have existed in place. Here's another problem in the selling cycle. Buyers have a different decision-making stage level than sellers. When I was at Southwestern Bell, we would come out to the marketplace with a need probably a year, sometimes 18 months after we've been working through the business model and the business strategy and the user groups and looking at where we're going to put them in our real estate portfolio. Then we go out to the marketplace. So we've already defined the need and we already have some of our favorites in mind. Back in the day, it was Steelcase and Herman Miller. That was back in 78, 79. So now somebody else comes in, and what they're trying to do is go through the typical stages of spin selling or any of those models, build rapport, do a need assessment, present your option, uncover objections, negotiate, propose, and close. You're already behind the 8 ball. So again, having people who have established long-term relationships gives you inside information on what's going on, because we shared information with our primary suppliers. This is what we're thinking of doing. These are some new needs we're looking at. So that's an important part of having this market intelligence, deep relationships. What you've essentially created is your own virtual selling organization. And again, how we typically go for sales. Cold calling is simply a numbers game. Warm calling improves those numbers. Lead exchanges, everyone's sharing the same information. Networking is unreliable and inconsistent. Now we get into swarm, this power networking concept of handpicked people dedicated in how we share information together, getting information, inside information, and referrals. I used it when the recession hit in Texas in 1985 and Act Software first came out. I took everybody's data, organized it into a database. When I was director of national sales for Harper's, when Kimball bought them, I used it there to establish new markets. And because we were coming in as the third or fourth manufacturer, my willingness to put in a network like this, manage it, meant I had access to all the data. So whoever controls the information has the advantage. So we were able to cherry pick, and we were also able to leverage and come up with a deal with our dealers that if it's coming out of our network and we're managing this, we get first shot at it. So this is the typical selling process, and these are the typical numbers that go forward. And so we know the process of a suspect, a prospect, a probable, and then a client. And the normal numbers are 100 suspects end up being one client. But few people map out the string after they become customers. So in your CRM system, there should be a process from the first time they're a customer to normalizing them into a repeat customer. And then there should be a process of identifying, we've got a repeat customer, let's start cross-selling them and making them a client. And then from clients, we want to move them into advocates where they would buy anything from you if you were selling it because of that deep relationship. So I think this piece is missing in most people's CRM thinking and process. So the swarm network is an ecosystem. It has all the animals in the food hierarchy. But the most important one we try to attract is the broker. Now, one of the challenges in networks is the broker seldom gets value out of the network. They say, we're in so early, we're in 3 years, sometimes earlier. And by the time it gets to your level, it's already a done deal. So we found ways to make the broker's life happy and get them to participate. And so if there's an interest in the network, we can talk about doing that. And I had a broker sit down with me, and the primary thing is relationships. The broker said if each person in the network, and the network usually was 12 to 15, 18 people in general, and if each person in the network introduced me to a strong client relationship once a year, then I'm in. because the hardest thing is to build. And again, building off that third person credibility. So when I did this with a broker in DC, he came to lunch. His name was Peter, and he had researched that client's entire real estate portfolio, which leases were working well, which ones were coming up. It blew the person away. And so the combination of my relationship with the end user and then the broker coming in prepared, it was a layup for the broker. Now it took 2 years, but they're good with that. And then after that, we were able to bring in, because we did it as kind of a swarm effort. Several other people in the network were able to piggyback on the effort.